Okay, so first, there was a sign-in sheet. You're able to sign in. There are also two blocks. One said slide, another one said forms. If you check that, I'll send you the slide. Check the other one, I'll send you the digital forms that we're going to talk about today. So maybe at the end, if you didn't check it beforehand, you check at the end and make sure I'll send it through your email. Also, if we have a fire, the fire escape's out there. We'll meet out at the parking lot between the station, and I'll grab the frost. There. So, we want to talk about 213 and 214 because it seems as though those are being used a lot more than we're used to these days. We had Ian and then 46 days later Nicole, and so the first thing you hear from us is, hey, you got your 213 and 214 ready to go? And so I thought it was a good time to go over those because sometimes they can be confusing. The way that the blocks are labeled and what FEMA expects to be filled in there might seem a little different. So that's why we wanted to go over these today. So our objective for this morning is to provide an overview of the justifications of why do we have to use the 13, or why do we choose to use 13, and with the 14 is more of a why do we have to. We're going to review the components of the forms. We'll go block by block to describe, especially on the 214, we'll go block by block to make sure we get a good understanding of what's expected in the block, and we'll be able to complete an actual 214. So in your folders, you'll have a 213 with the instructions following, and then you have the 214. There's 3 pages for that. With the 13, you can jot down notes. Really, that's just a messaging type of form. With the 14, you can either take notes in the blocks or you can actually fill it out. A lot of times when you do ICS courses, the instructor actually require you to do the 214 to get your certificate, depending on who you get. So use it however you want, but we'll go over each of those, and as we go along the blocks, we can fill one out together. So the why do we have the 213? So the 213 is new for the city because we started trying to do more in the realm of EM, try to do more reporting, more information collection. And so the 13 populates what we do on the situation report. And so if I were to try to populate a situation report with all the emails, the first thing Chief Graham likes to do is send emails. So trying to follow all that plus all the emails from you, it makes it a little difficult to try to make sure I capture what's being captured from who, when, and where. So the best way, instead of having a bunch of email chains that split off in other directions, is to start with the 213. And that basically is really like almost like an inter-office memo. It's just a messaging form so that we can make sure that we're capturing it. We file it by day. Sometimes we file it by shift if the incident is big and complex. And so from there, what I do is then take all the information collected by all the departments and shove it into the situation report. And so those, we just started being able to get to do 2 a day because we were able to streamline some of this stuff. So for Ian, you saw one in the morning, one in the evening after noon time, depending on when the county sent out their information. And it also was dependent on when I got 213s from everybody. So if you missed the deadline for the one, you're captured in the other one. So at some point, you're captured for that day of what you're doing. And these are important because there are situations where there are departments that rely on each other, or there's things that happen, departments do things, and the other department needs to know. For example, there was a facility shut off during Ian. Come to find out, when they shut down the facility, which is a good thing, it also shut down the sanitary sewer lift. So we were trying to figure out why that happened. Come to find out, it's because they flipped the switch, not knowing it was connected. Some things too with there's a hotel that happened to be have a generator that piggybacked and supplied power to our lift station, and that process failed as well. So not only for communication, but for learning in the long run. If the event is big enough, I can do an incident action plan. So that's another form we won't touch on, but as it builds, the sit rep helps build the incident action plan, and basically it tells us what is going on for that operational period, what our goals are, do we meet our goals from the last one, what resources do we need to fulfill those goals. That's when you get into some more complex situations. We did 2 for Ian during the height of doing full activation. And then the long term, which I think it got sent out yesterday, is the all-encompassing after action review. So that takes all this information. It takes whatever we did during our missions, input from city council and other municipalities and businesses, and combines it all together. So the 214, looking pretty simplified, is actually really important because it's a big building block to eventually get to this guy here. That helps us understand what we need to work on, what went well, how do we need to plan, what resources we need in the future. Because even having a storm 46 days in between, it seemed like Nicole had us stress operationally more than Ian did, even though it was a smaller storm. Because each storm is different. There's so many variables that you really can't, it's hard to really forecast what it's going to do for your operation. So the more we get of this type of information collected, we kind of see, oh, well, during this storm, we had this situation. We responded this way, but we really needed to do this as well. So that's the whole process starting with that 213. And the 213 can be one way. Sometimes it can be two ways, but generally for us, it's one way. We just take the information in and we process it through this. So the big bad 214. This is what we have to do. If we want to get reimbursement, if we want FEMA's money, we have to do FEMA's form. And there's a certain way to do it. The 214 we use primarily to get that category B protective measures, so that anything that we're doing prior to the storm, a lot of labor is collected with that. A lot of times when we do get the category, it's because of our labor costs. So for getting that reimbursement on the county level, we have to meet a monetary threshold. Everybody, all the cities, fire districts, county, together has to meet that threshold. Currently, the threshold is $4.10 per capita per county. So they take that, multiply it by your population, and they give you a number. We're just under 4 million. If we meet that threshold, then we can get reimbursement pending other eligibility requirements that we have. And with that, some of the first things that FEMA asked for when we're dealing with Ian currently, they asked for our labor policy. So they want to know, do you do premium pay during events? Obviously we do. Types of employees, their pay, so timesheets they ask for our insurance, see if any of that gets covered, but also work performed. That's where the 214 comes in, because it describes exactly what you're doing. And FEMA looks at that and says, well, that might not be related to the storm, or it is, and they will include that into our reimbursement or not. Some of the public assistance programs, they're divided into these categories. So a lot of times we'll do debris removal, we'll hit that one. A lot of times it depends.
That $4 million cap, so is that all of the other local municipalities, and
it's a threshold we have to make?
Is it just for the city?
It's for every municipality or governing district that collects information for the reimbursement. It's everybody collected together. So let's say St. Pete really collected a lot of information and Ellis County did. That's usually the two biggest. Maybe we did it for some reason, and the county as a whole missed that threshold. No, maybe it was our fault. Everybody has to come together and meet that threshold.
And what's the boundary where the storm limits are, or is it the county, the state?
It depends on the declaration. Usually the declaration is at the county level. Okay. Either way, it's not like they shot the county in half. Okay. Do declaration. So declaration and then measured at the county level for the house. So I predicted the category B. That one we always seem to be filling in, and generally we get, unless it's something small, we usually get that when we meet the threshold of that, and some smaller things. I know with Ian, I think we just learned that the wave attenuator might actually fall under one of those, and it's when I initially heard a $3 million tag maybe, so that helps too, collecting information. hopefully, maybe through the process, we can get that covered, or this portion of it covered. So, if you want to take out your 214, we'll get into the good stuff here. We're going to go block by block and explain the blocks. Some are pretty simple, some are more detailed. So, block 1 is the name of the incident. So, that's going to be based on, for instance, EN22, I've seen tropical storm. A lot of times we use tropical storm, and then the thing changes into a hurricane. Sometimes, I don't know. We were able to see that obviously you're talking about the same thing, but a lot of times I like using just the name of the year, so I don't have to worry about changing that incident name too much. But as long as it's in the ballpark, we get what it's for, and we can file it that way. So for this, I thought a good one might be ICS form class. So if you wanted to write down or jot down, that number 1 would be ICS form class, since we're all kind of doing it together. We're going to pretend that we've been put on a mission, and its mission is this class, and we're filling out our form. So block 2, really just time and date. The operational period, it really depends on what you're doing. So if you're in the EOC, that's going to be more rigid. You're going to have 12 to 12. If you're doing the pre-push team or anything else, that might be a little more flexible. That operational period might be a little different. Your date might be different. If you're doing, say, D shift, which is overnight generally, and the way we do it, 8 to 8 or 7 to 7, depending. So you might actually have 2 different dates. The dates from might span over 2 days. And then FEMA stresses using a 24-hour format on the time, so there's no question of whether or not you're talking about AM or PM. So for this, I just put today's date and 10 to 11 general.
So on these 214s, would you want all the departments' activities lumped into one? Like if we had overnight people at the EOC, and if we had push teams, would you rather them all in one 214, or do you want them all separated?
That's I have a special slide just for that. There is an answer to it, and that's actually very important. So on block 3, this is where it gets a little dicey. So you see name for block 3, but it's not your name. And that's probably the biggest one I see, is you put your own personal name. And so the form, if you're like in the mindset of the form's looking at it as the team. So it's coming from the perspective of the team. So push team, that would go here. Damage assessment team, that would go here. EOC staff, that would go here, not your name. So that's a big one that I see. And even I look online of examples of 214s and putting their name on there.
So department name.
It would be if you're doing a department, or if you've got a team, if you're in that team, whatever name that that team has would go there. Yeah, for track ops. So for this, I put Clearwater Staff Unit. We're kind of doing the same thing. Another kind of confusing one. Number 4, the ICS position. This refers to the person in charge of the team, but not the title of their normal day-to-day job. So my normal day-to-day job is EM specialist, but for this team, I'm the trainer. So leader of the team, myself, and then my position specifically for this event. It's all very specific to the event. This can be associated block 5 with 4 and 8, as we'll see in a little bit. It's the home agency of unit or unit completing the 214. So maybe you are the unit leader and you are completing the 214. Your name, your regular agency, day-to-day agency would go here. And I was thinking about it, and I almost wonder if it's because they want to know if they have to find the form, maybe they know where to look. And if by the time you get done with all this, and you're back to your day-to-day, well, they know at least if they had a question, they know who or what department to hit up to find out for clarification. So it's going to be just your day-to-day of whoever's preparing the form. So then we wonder where we go or what type of things we track. So for 6, resources assigned, FEMA sees people as resources. So that's where you'll start filling in names of the individuals on your team, the position that they are currently in the team. So to be team manager, team leader. For me, it's planning section chief when I'm in the OC. And then the home agency and units are your day-to-day. So planning and development, they do damage assessments. So they're on the damage assessment team, but normally they're planning and development. So that'd be the difference between those ICS position blocks and the home agency and unit blocks. So the activity form, or activity log for block 7, time in 24-hour format. This one you'll be as specific as possible because FEMA is looking to make sure that the things that you do are actually associated with the events and not maybe your day-to-day job creeping in and you're doing something else that's not associated with the storm. If it's not documented, it didn't happen for them. And then these forms, when you take them straight off of FEMA's library, they're fillable, but they do not word wrap. So something I've also ran into is I'll get the 213s, 214s, and it'll be cut off because when you save and send it, it just shows what you see on the screen. So if you need to, I'm going to see if I can figure out a way around that, but if you do need extra space, just drop a line. And here again, by the preparer name, could be you, could be the unit leader. You could be in, your information could be in those 3 different blocks. Your regular, sorry, your ICS position title, signature, date, time. Primarily, this is just used to make sure if we need to answer some questions on the form, we know who to look for. So the first 2 are pretty important to add in there. Any questions with that form?
So you don't put it in your regular title?
No, this is going to be,
Make up one?
well, yeah.
Damage assessment team?
Sure. Yeah, if that's what the team agrees on. You got to vote you in.
So my question is, I have 7 people, and sometimes if Charles wasn't here, I could have 15 people. I could literally have 10, 12 people do entirely 2 different things.
Right.
So I want them to fill out their own form, but what I'm getting is that I have to prepare that for them, and I can't be everywhere at once to see what they're doing. And for the accuracy of what we need, they have to do their own. So how do we?
That is something I want to bring up.
Okay.
So I know a lot of times some of the individuals will use it as a personal log. And so if you start with a team, let's say, and you split your team into 2, for whatever reason, your team has been doing the same thing for whatever reason, you get an A and B team. It's oftentimes it's a push team. At that split, your original form needs to end, and then you need to start a new form for each team because it potentially be that they're doing different things or the times aren't going to be exactly the same. So that's one of the 2 perspectives. If you're doing, I know we did a lot when Resort Parks and Rec, we would just take our own forms with us or finish them, try to be as detailed as we could, but individually we were doing things. And so if we were, let's say we're doing forms individually, but we're still together in a group, the preparer, maybe that group assigns preparer, and maybe you won't need 2 forms. Maybe you keep 2 forms, and it's one of those things we'll have to filter. We could send all the individual forms, it's just going to take a lot longer for FEMA to go through them. So if we can try to consolidate some of that stuff, it'll make it go a lot quicker. Jim?
So if you do that split, do you have to assign a team leader to each of those teams?
Your team, it depends. It depends on the level of control that you need. If you on top, if you split, if you control the 2 teams, then that's your span of control and it's manageable, then keep it like that. It just depends on what you want to do. But if you do, you just want to capture that you've created a team leader. Perhaps that team leader then can also deal with your documentation because they're going to be right there in the field with your crew. Prepare could sort and merge. A lot of times, as I'm doing now, I'm getting a lot of individual stuff. And so right now there's a SharePoint file And what I'm doing is just looking through to make sure, at least trying to get activities grouped together or teams grouped together if there was individual forums created. And then those files are getting sent up to FEMA. We have a rep working with us right now, so they'll start to ask for a lot of those. So that's something that we can take on too to help instead of trying to catalog and consolidate some things. So my form for this class, as an example, would look like this. From the perspective of the team leader, doing one form for everybody. So in the EOC, we do this because we're all doing same thing, same time, same date in the EOC. So we'll have an EOC 214 looks similar to this, and we can do that because again we're all in the same room, do the same thing. So I have an incident name, my time frame today for the hour. This is the unit, the name and position title of the person in charge of the unit, my regular day-to-day home agency, through where RSVP names on here, but I put everybody's name. If you have a situation where you need more space, you just start another page number 1 and just notate page 2 of 2. Their positions within this group, where they normally live day to day, and the things that we went over here. My name is prepare, so this is going to be a case where it's the same name, the title, sign, and date. Any questions on the forms? I know the name part can be a little tricky. Just want to make sure. And then also the resource assign part. Your name is also going to be, so your name, if you're the leader, will also have to be in the resource list too. This one I want to throw up real quick because a lot of times we hear about equipment. Equipment's a big deal, especially when you're going on missions. This one you won't have because this form is actually not a FEMA form. It's a state form. FEMA doesn't have an equipment log. I'm assuming because perhaps they assume that we all have our different log systems. And so this is a form the state put together for law enforcement, and it's just a way to track equipment. You can get reimbursed differently based on different equipment. And even we learned during the Ian mission that even things as silly as the length of the bar on your chainsaw makes it to where either it's reimbursable or not. And so it's details like that that will change whether or not you're going to get that money back. This is good to kind of let you know what they're looking for. You can create your own. We can send this out too if you like this one. But at least you'll know if you create your own what they're looking for when they're trying to capture this information for reimbursement. There's a whole guide. There's a huge thick guide of every possible piece of equipment and differentiation of it. And there's a money amount down to the cent. And so detail is important for this type of thing. Of course, we have all these other forms. If anyone's interested, there's tons. The 218 is like a vehicle equipment inventory form, and sometimes we use it. But primarily for everybody who's not doing this as a normal job, it's the 14, it's the 13. I get to deal with a lot of this other stuff when we have a big deal going on. Oh, Jim.
Just would it be a good opportunity, as we go through these forms, to build a citywide database of equipment that we have that matches the categories, like you say, the inventory of chainsaws and the types of vehicles and those kinds of things that matter, have that inventory so it's easier for each department to document what they sent, and we can compare that to a list that the city already has of what resources we have.
Yeah, so creating a inventory system, we just got access to FEMA's resource inventory system, RIS, and so what it does is you'll type in something in there, and it's able to resource type it. So it will tell you it's reimbursable, what type it is, because a lot of times you ask for a fire truck, they want to know what type, 1, 2, or 3. And the 1, 2, or 3 might be a difference of whether or not it has a water tank on it, if it's a truck, how many gallons of water it has. So the typing helps you with that. That's something we were starting to build. We just got it this year. That has chainsaws and all kinds of things. It's just a matter. There's a lot of stuff out there, and so I've gotten with Journal Services on a lot of that. We've gotten spreadsheets, so punching them in, so it's a lot easier to know what we have and what we have to use for ourselves and what we have to offer other people.
So
we're collecting. Yeah, it's just there's.
Built out
Yeah, it's being populated.
yet. Okay.
It's a free service from FEMA. Just trying to populate our information there. I'll take a moment. Any other questions? I'm always available. I know there's forms can be confusing, and then you're in the thick of an incident, and there's questions that come up. But I hope this made it easier. I know every time we get an event, there's a lot of questions about the 14. There's a lot of questions if we have to do the 14. I always would do the 14. If you're doing something related to the storm at all, always do it because it's easier to remember then than it is to remember it later. And then people says, hey, you got a form for this? I don't know, I have to check. Also, a lot of times too, as the storm progresses, I know, talk about the library, we don't usually ask the library, but this last storm with Ian, we're like, maybe the library could come in handy if we wanted to do our own citizen information center, because it was getting to the point that maybe we might. And if it's something where we're having a recovery operation, a library is a great place. Everybody knows where it's at. It usually has the ability to handle that type of thing. So the sooner we get the ball rolling on that, we won't have to catch up doing paperwork. On the
So we use a daily report of activities on every day. That's very similar to the 214s, but a little different. Is that acceptable as an alternate format, or do we have to use the 214?
I've seen places change it a little bit. I don't know if I'd want to risk it because FEMA, it's their form, it's their money. I don't want to.
Like for us, for our MS4 permit, basically we're doing 2 forms then during the storm.
Okay.
We're doing the 214, and we have to do our daily report of activities.
I could ask. I mean, we're working with
I can send you
someone
a
now.
copy of what we do.
Yeah, that'd be good. I could send it to them and see. They might just like their form, and unfortunately, no, it's their game.
I know this is a little different than what was sent out before. Are there multiple forms of this 214?
For the 14,
Right.
which one was?
There's some subtle differences.
We had the equipment log sheet, I think, for Ian.
Okay, yeah, that was.
We didn't have like a legit
That's
214.
right, I did see that. Yeah. So the equipment law was just for equipment, but I did remember getting that back, and I thought, it worked okay. I was able to figure it out.
Okay.
But this is for personnel. This is strictly for people.
Not the.
For people, other ones for equipment.
Gotcha. Okay. This is the latest, right? So.
This is it straight from FEMA's
That's the
website.
form we should have had.
I was in the military, and if we filled out a form and it was in the the latest form, we'd have to redo the form. Well, that's the form BBB,
Oh,
but it's not the newest BBB, and you'd be starting over again.
Yeah, this one's been pretty consistent.
Okay, great.
Same old thing.
So we talked about the incidents and what we were doing for the activities log. Do we quantify the hours in this portion also?
You're gonna not necessarily like a total tally you don't have to put down, but you will mark your time. So if we go back here. So I kind of try to divide it up to show an example. So at 10 o'clock, I completed the setup of the course classroom, began accepting students. 10:05 began instruction, completed, and then demobilized the classroom. It could be something like that. And so you're getting these times, and the demo kind of helps me to remember what my operational period was. And so then that will tell me how long we're working. But really, what FEMA looks for are the timesheets. So they're also getting timesheets as well. This just gives some context to what those hours we're doing.
They're getting our timesheets,
Right. Yeah.
and then so our stuff has to be coded correctly so they can identify it as storm activity.
That's what the code. Yeah. A lot of times finance will come out with code. That's
Okay.
Things they do. Here's a code from the storm. That's a payroll thing that I'm gladly don't touch. I'll do with this. But yes, so this helps to contextualize what that timesheet is doing.
What's your expectation from departments who don't have any storm activities that are just everyone's on admin leave and doing nothing? What kind of reporting do you want from
The
departments?
213, okay? Yeah, just so we know, because then we know that you're listening or you're who's watching, and if there was a change, we know that you saw the change, and so even like a daily thing, nothing to report, that'd be good, because then I won't have to wonder like, hey, maybe they didn't get the SIP report, or maybe they didn't get the piece of communication. I'll know that you did, and you're still good to go.
On the hours thing, we had been trying to quantify in the 214s, like our damage assessment groups, there was 16 people. And we were trying to keep track of all the hours in there. Is that helpful, or should we just lean on the top timesheets?
It's not gonna hurt, but they're going to look at the timesheets. That's more concrete.
So that's the
Yeah.
deal closer.
Okay.
So you don't necessarily have to be as specific. Say their time frame is for 4 hours of an assignment.
Yeah, I could say.
Break down to that 4 hours specific things they're doing doesn't have to be tracked per se.
Yeah, if I'm like clearing a park, I'm clearing Crest Lake Park for an hour, I could put that time frame in there. Yeah. So I'm doing the same thing for that time. If I change to another park, I'll probably want to put that in there.
So like with the inspectors doing storm impressions, and they do it by grid. So, if it takes them half hour for one grid, they don't have to track each of that. They just their overall assignment.
Yeah, but I mean, it might be good to know how long it takes us for each grid. Maybe we have an issue in the grid. Maybe we need more in that grid.
Okay.
Yeah, so for
So
planning, yeah, for planning that'd be really helpful. We know that grid's gonna take us a little longer. Generally, it takes us longer, so. Yeah. Any other questions? So the sign-in sheet, again, I just want to remind everybody that if you want the slides and if you want the forms, I can send them to you as well. I keep all mine in a nice little folder, a blank copy, so then I can just take it, pull it into my whatever name storm file, and always have it available, and just go off of that, and then it's easier just to send the file over.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So if you just check the box or the column on the sign-in sheet, I'll make sure I get them to you. Other than that, anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You got something I know.
That'd be good.